and he saw an ambush being set up by the Viet Cong, and he saw them getting ready to fire on his patrol, and he yelled back to warn them.
Before the clock wound down on a legendary life, Chuck Norris pulled back the curtain on the empire he built in martial arts. But just when fans thought his story had no secrets left, he dropped a bombshell, naming the fighters he doesn't just dislike, but truly can't stand. This isn't about petty rivalry. This is deeper. These are clashes that bruised more than just egos, moments that tested his legacy, shook his pride, and left scars time never erased. What really happened behind the scenes to put these men on his personal blacklist? Stay with us, because what's coming next isn't just history. It's the untold truth about grudges Chuck Norris never forgot and never forgave. When people hear the name Chuck Norris, they picture an unstoppable force, an action legend who walks through chaos without even blinking. But rewind the story far enough, and that myth fades into something far more human. A quiet, uncertain boy named Carlos Ray Norris, born on March 10, 1940, in a small town called Ryan, Oklahoma. Before the fame, before the fists, before the world turned him into a symbol of invincibility, his reality was harsh and unforgiving. According to his early life story, nothing about his childhood hinted at greatness. His mother, Wilma, carried Irish roots and unshakable strength. His father, Ray D. Norris, who claimed Cherokee ancestry, was mostly absent, not physically gone, but lost to alcohol and distance. As the oldest of three boys, young Chuck didn't grow up chasing dreams, he grew up surviving. Then came the breaking point. In 1956, at just 16 years old, his world split apart when his parents officially divorced. Stability disappeared overnight. But in the middle of that storm, one person refused to let the family collapse: his mother. She became everything at once: provider, protector, and backbone. Working multiple jobs, she dragged her sons toward a second chance, moving them to California with nothing but hope and determination. What he endured in those years, it wasn't just struggle, it was a test that would shape everything he became. And here's the twist most people don't expect. Growing up, Chuck Norris wasn't the strong, confident athlete people imagine. He wasn't the fastest, the toughest, or even the most noticeable kid in the room. In fact, he was the opposite. Before the legend, before the roundhouse kicks, there was just a quiet, uncertain kid trying to find his place in the world. In his own words, he wasn't the hero people imagine. He was shy, awkward, and far from athletic. But in 1958, everything shifted. At just 18 years old, Chuck made a decision that would rewrite his destiny. He enlisted in the United States Air Force. Soon after, he was shipped halfway across the world to Osan Air Base in South Korea, a nation still scarred by the aftermath of the Korean War, where tension hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. By day and night, he walked the base as an air policeman, patrolling the shadows, enforcing order, living a routine that felt worlds away from greatness. But in those long, quiet hours, something unexpected found him. Because it was there, in a foreign land far from home, that Chuck stumbled upon something that would change everything. At Osan, he was introduced to Tung Soo Do, a powerful Korean martial art built on sharp strikes, disciplined movement, and unbreakable focus. And in that moment, the shy, unsure young man began to disappear, and the fighter the world would one day fear was finally being born. Steel, sweat, and silence. That's where it started. Under the watchful eye of Shin Jae-chul, Chuck stepped onto the mat, and within moments, something undeniable sparked. This wasn't just training, it was destiny calling. But just as everything began to rise, one unexpected moment nearly changed his path forever. By 1962, when his service ended, Chuck Norris wasn't the same man who had left. He returned to the United States with a black belt in Tang Soo Do and a fire that refused to go out. Gone was the shy, uncertain kid. In his place stood a man on a mission. Back in California, survival came first. Chuck took any job he could find, teaching karate, grinding day and night, and eventually opening his own schools. In 1963, he launched his very first dojo in Torrance. But behind that bold move was a harsh reality. Money was tight, and failure was always lurking. There were nights he didn't go home because he had no choice. He slept on the hard floor of his own dojo, holding on to a dream that most people would have walked away from. But something about him stood out. Students began to notice it. The precision, the discipline, the raw intensity. He didn't just teach karate, he lived it. No excuses, no shortcuts. Then came 1964. Chuck stepped into the world of competitive karate, ready to prove himself. But reality hit hard. Fight after fight, loss after loss. It wasn't the victory story he imagined. Not yet. Because what looked like failure was actually the beginning of something far more dangerous. Those losses didn't just hurt, they burned. And for Chuck Norris, that fire could have ended everything, or forged something unstoppable. He chose the second. Instead of walking away, Chuck disappeared into the grind. New countries, new fighting styles, endless hours studying every opponent like a chess master preparing for war. Piece by piece, he rebuilt himself, sharper, faster, smarter. Then came 1968, the year everything flipped. What started as a simple goal, win a few local tournaments, climb the ranks, exploded into dominance. Chuck didn't just win, he took over. He captured the professional middleweight karate championship and refused to let it go for 6 straight years. He went on to claim the world karate title 6 consecutive times, carving his name into history before walking away in 1974, undefeated. Not beaten, not broken, untouchable. But this wasn't about trophies anymore. This was about respect, legacy, power. And just when it seemed like his story had reached its peak, fate stepped in. Because in that same year, 1968, during one tournament, Chuck crossed paths with a man who would change everything: Bruce Lee. Bruce was already a global phenomenon, a legend in motion. But when these two met, something electric happened. It wasn't rivalry, it was recognition. A bond formed instantly, one warrior seeing another. That connection would open a door Chuck never expected, pulling him out of the ring and into something far bigger than fighting. And what came next, no one saw coming. 1972, and just like that, the world witnessed a collision that would echo through martial arts history forever. When Chuck Norris stepped onto the big screen beside Bruce Lee in Way of the Dragon, it wasn't just a debut, it was a moment of destiny. Chuck became Colt, the silent, lethal American hired to destroy Lee's Tung Lung. But what unfolded wasn't just a fight, it was pure cinematic warfare. This wasn't about flashy moves or scripted punches, it was raw intensity. Two masters, no shortcuts. Every strike carried weight, every second burned with tension. Speed met precision, power met control. And audiences, they were completely locked in. The duel became legendary, not just because of who won, but because of how it felt. Even in defeat, Norris didn't lose, he arrived. His performance was impossible to ignore, turning him from a martial artist into a rising force in Hollywood. Doors didn't just open, they flew off the hinges. After Way of the Dragon, offers started pouring in. The industry had seen something real, something dangerous. But becoming a star? That fight was far from over. In 1977, Norris finally stepped into the spotlight as a leading man in Breaker Breaker. The film didn't shake the box office, but it did something more important. It proved Chuck Norris wasn't a gimmick. No costumes, no tricks, no illusions. Just a man who could walk into a fight and make you believe he'd walk out. In 1978, everything changed, and Hollywood didn't see it coming. When Good Guys Wear Black hit theaters, it wasn't just another action flick, it was a statement. The box office responded loud and clear, and suddenly, Chuck Norris was no longer fighting for recognition. He was impossible to ignore. Then came the takeover. By 1980, the Octagon exploded onto the scene, throwing Chuck into a brutal war against shadowy ninjas and sealing his reputation as a force Hollywood couldn't replace. The message was undeniable. This wasn't just a champion stepping into films anymore. This was dominance. By the early 1980s, Chuck Norris had crossed the line from martial arts legend to cinematic powerhouse. The quiet fighter from Oklahoma was gone. In his place stood a full-blown movie star, commanding screens, redefining action, and building a legacy that refused to be ignored. But here's the twist. Everything you've seen so far, that was only the setup, because what came next wouldn't just make him famous, it would turn Chuck Norris into a global icon, a household name, and a legend wrapped in fame, family, and unexpected fallout. As Chuck's star was rising, his life off-screen was a storm waiting to break. In 1958, barely 18, he married his high school sweetheart, Diane Holchek, a young couple brimming with hope and dreams. Diane stuck by him through the lean, struggling years, but fame has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. And Chuck, he wasn't perfect. While serving in the Air Force in 1962, a brief affair with a woman named Johanna would unknowingly leave a lifelong mark, a daughter, Dina. The secret stayed buried for decades, hidden beneath the weight of a rising career. By the 1980s, Chuck wasn't just a star, he was an icon. In 1984, he starred in Missing in Action, a film that wasn't just another paycheck, it was personal. The story of a former POW returning to Vietnam to save American soldiers resonated with him deeply. His younger brother, Willin Norris, had been killed in action during the Vietnam War, and Chuck carried that grief like a scar. Missing in Action became his tribute, a cinematic reckoning, a way to honor a brother lost too soon. Audiences flocked to theaters. Critics sneered, but the box office roared, paving the way for sequels and solidifying Chuck's place as a legend of action cinema. It was the role that cemented Chuck as a warrior for the underdog, a man who never backed down, no matter the odds. When Missing in Action hit theaters, Chuck's fame exploded. He was on every magazine cover, dominating television interviews and filling cinemas nationwide. By 1988, he wasn't just an action star, he was an author too, releasing The Secret of Inner Strength, My Story, a candid reflection on discipline, faith, and perseverance. But behind the spotlight, the picture was far from perfect. Nearly 30 years of marriage to Diane had begun to fracture under the relentless weight of fame, long tours, and personal missteps. In 1988, the unthinkable happened. Chuck and Diane quietly divorced. No public scandal, no screaming headlines, just a heartbreaking end to a love that had begun when they were teenagers. And just when the dust seemed to settle, the past came knocking in ways Chuck never could have anticipated, pulling family secrets back into the spotlight and reminding him that even heroes have battles they can't fight alone. In 1991, Chuck Norris received a letter that would shake his world. It came from a woman named Dina, claiming she was his biological father. She wasn't after money, fame, or headlines. She simply wanted the truth. Chuck, who had no idea she existed, was stunned. The revelation dredged up memories of a time long buried, back when he had no clue that Johanna had been carrying a child during their brief Air Force affair. After a storm of disbelief, Chuck agreed to meet her. The encounter was nothing short of emotional. Dina poured out the life she had lived without a father, and Chuck, with tears in his eyes, apologized for the years lost. They had missed so much, yet in that moment, a bond began to form. Chuck embraced his daughter fully, never denying her again, opening the door to the family he had unknowingly abandoned. But life, ever unpredictable, had another chapter waiting. In 1998, Chuck met Gina O'Kelly, a former model and television host, nearly 23 years his junior. Sparks flew instantly. That same year, they married, and for Chuck, Gina was a sanctuary, a calm in the storm of his turbulent life. "The woman right next to me is my wife, my beautiful wife," he would say, a smile lighting his face.
The woman right next to me is my wife, my beautiful wife, who we've been married now for 20 years.
3 years later, joy multiplied. The couple welcomed twin daughters, Dana Lee and Dakota. Chuck, now a father again, felt a renewed sense of purpose. It was a chapter of redemption, of love regained, and a reminder that even in life's unexpected twists, happiness could arrive when you least expected it. The 1980s and 90s were a roller coaster for Chuck Norris, but one thing was clear: the spotlight never left him. He dominated screens with movies like The Octagon in 1980, Lone Wolf McQuade in 1983, and Code of Silence in 1985, each role cementing his reputation as the ultimate no-nonsense action hero. By the mid-80s, Chuck wasn't just an action star, he was Hollywood's heavyweight, earning alongside legends like Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. But Chuck Norris wasn't content to just throw punches on screen. By the late 80s and early 90s, he had become a household name not only for his martial arts mastery, but for his unfiltered voice off-screen. While most stars stayed silent on politics and religion, Chuck spoke his mind, and it got people talking. And talk they did. Praise, backlash, controversy, it all came knocking. Chuck's political journey began in the 1980s when he openly supported Ronald Reagan. In Hollywood, that was no small gamble. Aligning with conservative politics in Tinseltown, that was asking for a storm. But Chuck admired Reagan's patriotism, his toughness, and his no-nonsense stance on crime and national defense. In interviews, Chuck made it clear, America, in his eyes, was losing its moral compass. Rising crime, eroding family values, and what he called the tyranny of political correctness, these weren't just headlines to him, they were warnings. Chuck was ready to fight, not with fists this time, but with words, conviction, and an unshakable belief in hard work, discipline, and old-school values. The roar of applause followed him wherever he went. Fans saw Chuck Norris as a true patriot, a man unafraid to speak his mind. But fame cuts both ways. Critics saw a celebrity wielding influence like a weapon, pushing ideas that divided instead of united. The storm hit hardest in 2008 during the battle over California's Proposition 8, a ballot measure that would redefine the meaning of marriage in the state. As the nation clashed over whether marriage should be reserved for a man and a woman, Chuck made his stand. He supported Proposition 8 openly, writing opinion pieces, giving interviews, and arguing that traditional marriage was a cornerstone of American society that needed defending. It's not about hate, he insisted, it's about values. But in the age of social media, words travel fast and backlash hit harder. LGBTQ+ groups and progressive organizations painted him as outdated, even discriminatory. Protests flared outside his appearances. Tweets, posts, and hashtags exploded with fury. Fans were split. Some walked away, others defended his right to speak, but Hollywood and the public at large had drawn a line in the sand. Then came 2009, when he ignited one of his most explosive controversies yet. Chuck publicly questioned whether President Barack Obama was even born in the United States, demanding the president release his birth certificate. He claimed any orders from Obama were illegal, a statement that reverberated through media and social networks alike. Around the same time, he took aim at Sharia law, criticized the Obama administration's actions toward the Boy Scouts, and didn't hesitate to throw his support behind a lineup of Republican heavyweights: Ron Paul, Newt Gingrich, Mitt Romney, and Ted Cruz. Controversy followed him even there, from backing Roy Moore amid public backlash to praising Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And Chuck didn't stop. In 2019, he partnered with Glock, a move that shocked some fans amid nationwide debates on gun control and a string of tragic school shootings. Whether you cheered him or shook your head, Chuck Norris had once again proven that his influence was as unstoppable as a roundhouse kick and just as unpredictable. In 2021, Chuck Norris stepped back into the political spotlight, throwing his weight behind the campaign to oust California Governor Gavin Newsom. He championed Larry Elder, a firebrand conservative talk show host, as the replacement. Through the storm of headlines, social media firestorms, and endless debates, Chuck remained unshaken, steadfast, unapologetic, and fiercely vocal. What set him apart from other celebrities wasn't just that he had opinions, it was the way he wielded them like a weapon. Controversy didn't intimidate him, it fueled him. When pressed about his support for Proposition 8 or his past political stances, Chuck's answer was always the same: no regrets. Popularity was fleeting. Integrity, in his mind, was everything. Quote, "If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything." End quote. And Chuck, he stood tall, unyielding, a warrior not just on screen, but in real life. By the late 2000s, Chuck Norris wasn't storming the headlines like before. He stepped back from politics, turning his focus to personal projects, writing, and the life of a family man. But make no mistake, his legacy was already etched into the heart of American culture. On screen, he was the unstoppable hero who could take on any foe. Off screen, he was a lightning rod, bold, unfiltered, and impossible to ignore. Some fans cheered every word he spoke. Critics turned away, but one thing never changed. Chuck remained exactly the man he always was, unflinching, fearless, and ready for a fight, whether in a dojo, on a movie set, or in the wild battlefield of public opinion.